To the May 7, 2025 meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee of the Transportation Planning Organization. My name is Rick Fernandez. I have the privilege of chairing this group. I welcome you all. There are a couple of new folks in the room. Look forward to getting to know you and introductions tonight for the first time. As is our normal course, I'm going to start off working to my left around the room. Ask everyone please to identify yourself and your appointing authority. Again, my name is Rick Fernandez. I'm a Hispanic at-large representative.
Hello, everyone. I'm Stephen Hollenkamp with the City of Plant City.
Maybe Adams at large.
Clifford Reese at large.
Stephen Jones, Apollo Beach at large.
Chris Gonzalez, member at large.
Michael Carter, appointed by the planning commission.
Okay, whoever needs to mute, please go ahead and do that.
I'll go ahead and mute. Okay, we're good.
Michael, did you do the honors
Yeah,
already?
Michael Carter, planning commission.
Dustin Johnson at large.
Ed Majewski, the Expressway Authority.
Brandon Wayne, if I'm being completely honest, I don't remember this part 100%, but on behalf of Commissioner Bowles.
Mayor Sill at large, first meeting.
Welcome.
Welcome. Good evening. I'm Christina Costa, appointed by Councilman Guido Maniscalco.
And we missed a couple of folks in the first round. Dana?
Dana Lazarus, appointed by Tampa City Councilman Lynn Hurtak.
Joe?
Joseph Citro, and I've been appointed by Commissioner Harry Cohen.
And do we have any members online?
I don't see any members online.
All right. Gail, if you'd be kind enough, please call the roll.
Switching this to me now.
What?
Like last meeting.
Oh, you're calling
I'm
the roll?
calling the roll.
Okay, Gail, never mind.
Yep, sorry.
Sarah, if you'd be so kind, please, just to call the roll and declare quorum.
And I actually took note when everyone was here, so I don't have to call it, but I can declare we have a quorum.
Right, very good.
Give us a minute or two.
All right. Appreciate that. Okay, that takes us to public comment. Is there anyone in the room for a public comment? Nope. Anyone online for public comment?
Anyone online for public comment, please use the raise hand feature or unmute yourself. I see no one online for public comment.
No. Okay. For the new members, it's always this exciting, all right? Just so okay. And we do have two new members joining us. Brendan Nguyen, spelling that correctly, from Commissioner Bowles, and I know I'm gonna mess this up. Umaria, close. Afsel?
Yep.
I thought that, and at large. So welcome.
Happy to be here.
Take a second and tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Yeah, so I've always just been really interested in getting involved in my community and, learning more about better ways we can plan our transportation. It makes such a big impact on all of our lives, and I figured this would be a great place to do it. So I'm really excited to be here. I appreciate everybody being so friendly, and of course the free pizza.
And what area of the county are you from?
Oh, I'm from Tampa Heights. Originally, I'm from New Tampa, I think.
We're neighbors. Right. Beautiful. Nice to meet you.
Similar to what Brandon, I just wanted to get involved in another way. Honestly, didn't even know this body existed. And then I found out about it, and next thing I know, I was on it. And I like bicycles and I like public transit.
And what area of the county are you from?
West Tampa.
Okay. Well, welcome to you both. All right, at this point, chair's report. Real quick, the CAC acted on one action item last month that was also addressed by the TPO board. For the new members, it's been our practice to track what we do here during our meetings and then what the TPO board does with our recommendation at their meeting. Those meetings take place 1 week later. They will meet again Wednesday of next week. Right? So in any event, at their last meeting, let me read through this here. All right, we took action on tip amendments, Branch Forbes Road and McIntosh Road widenings. We recommended approval of those tip amendments, and the TPO board did in fact approve those amendments. So went along with our recommendations, although I certainly can't say that we were the reason they did that. They did follow suit. Let's see. All right, a slight diversion from the norm. I had asked for Dana Lazarus, sitting here to my left, to give the committee a brief report on activities at the Heart Board this week. And without taking any of the wind out of the sails, I'll just turn that over to Dana.
Thank you, Rick. So I have been following Heart closely. And this last Monday, the Heart Board voted to actually update their charter for the first time since technically 1986, when they did a very slight change. But basically since 1979, they changed the charter to allow up to 1 mil of millage rate to be assessed on property taxes, 1,000th of a cent assessed on real property, to fund their operations, up from about $500,000. So they doubled that allowance. It is just an allowance in their charter of a maximum millage rate to fund their system. It does not actually implement it. This was a really, really, really important thing that they did. If they didn't do it at this meeting, it probably wouldn't have been done in time to actually get a millage increase on the ballot next November. And what I mean by that is the election is in 2026. There's no general election in 2027. And in 2028, Hart is going to see drastic funding cuts. That is going to lead to layoffs, root cuts, the whole nine. If people are familiar with Mission Max that happened in 2017, 2018, that's why they took all the bus routes out of South and East County. That's why a lot of the frequencies went from 15 minutes to like 30 minutes to an hour, is because of a massive budget cut that happened. And so we're going to see that again in 2028. What has to happen next, though, because it didn't actually implement the change, is that all of the jurisdictions that are part of Hart, which is Temple Terrace and the City of Tampa and the Board of County Commission, Hillsborough, have to also ratify the changes. Then the Board of County Commission has to vote to put the language on the ballot to allow that millage increase. And then the general population of the county has to vote yes in order to see that increase. So there's three more steps between today and saving Hart from disaster. So that's what I want to say about that, and I'm happy to answer any questions about it. But it's going to be a long road to actually see anything big happen.
And Dana, that would potentially be on the ballot for 2026.
2026 is like the year.
Christine, you have a question?
Dana, thank you for that report. I have heard this soundbite many times, and I'd like to validate it through you. That for a community of our size, with our number of residences, Hart is the most poorly funded transit agency in the nation against our peer cities. Is that true?
Yeah, so what we say is that we're the most underfunded transit system per capita in the nation.
Okay. And would this make us like normal or just less awful?
That's such a good question. It will, if we implement 1 full mill in 2026, we will be back to just Mission Max levels in 7 years.
Oh.
Yeah. And even back in 2017, 2018, we had a pretty, I say, an anemic system. It was not great. It was a shoestring budget compared to other transit systems for communities our size.
Stephen?
Yeah, what is Mission Max first? And then second, you said, maybe you already answered this, but why is funding supposed to fall off in 2028?
Mm-hmm.
What's the mechanism?
So Mission Max it's simply a massive budget cut that happened in 2017, 2018. They branded it Mission Max in order to make it more palatable to people. So all you have to do, everyone, is Google Mission Max and you'll learn about what happened there. And the reason that actually happened, I have insider information, is because the CEO at the time froze wages for the drivers, violating their union contract, and then they had a bunch of back pay. So I don't have, that is not verified. Let me just say that is not verified. I cannot actually find why Mission Max happened, but that's what I heard from drivers. So, and then in 2028, it's simply the fact that like the population is growing and the amount of money is not keeping up with that.
Stephen Jones.
Yeah, so I understand that the trolley system is going to be expanded. Isn't that correct? So how much of that, how much will the trolley system take up the slack from the cuts of the?
We all heard the presentation from the city of Tampa where they said that they funded a study to investigate where they're going to get the capital stack to expand the streetcar. So I know that that is happening, but the implementation of like the capital expense to actually expand it it won't start until after the study's done in like a year or more.
2
years. So I don't know how, because Hart is a partner on the streetcar. I don't know how it would be affected. It would probably be vulnerable to cuts, just like the rest of the system.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. In actual like estimated dollar amounts, how much are we underfunded per capita, right? Because if you say a $500,000 or what, that doesn't really give true numbers, you know?
There was a really good article that was put out and it said something like $11 per person, I believe, versus like 74 for other systems. Something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers. There's a bunch of things that go into explaining it, but we know, for example, the heavy maintenance facility, it needs another 100 million just for one facility to be safe. So I have been saying that they're about 100 million per year underfunded, but that's not an official number. That's just kind of like looking at all their unfunded needs vaguely.
Any other questions for Dana? We don't have anybody online, right?
We don't have any board members.
And I would just like to say, I'll keep people in the loop about what the next steps are, like the Temple Terrace voting yes, City of Tampa voting yes, all of that kind of stuff. And hopefully all of us can go and let people know that this is happening as it's happening. And if you care about public transit and not having no public transit in the community and want to be stuck in gridlock forever, you know, then let me know. And I'll keep everybody in the loop.
Okay. Thank you, Dana.
Excuse me. One other point that may be interesting, since we do have new members, is that there is fantastic ridership on Route 1. And so there's sort of this big success story that is evolving throughout this year. So that's an important part. And maybe as you keep us updated, toss in a little bit of those great numbers.
It is good timing that Route 1 happened while this is now happening, because with the fare free Route 1, the ridership has gone up 33%. So it started at 3,000 riders per day and is now at 5,000 riders per day. And we hope that that continues to grow, but it really does show that people will ride. People want public transit.
Justin?
Can I say something though? I mean, I think Route 1 basically runs through, I'm going to designate it as Metro Tampa area, right? And so
University.
for those of us who, you know, live out in the suburbs, aka unincorporated Hillsborough County, where you don't have any public services, it's hard to convince people saying, hey, we need to do this, because their first reaction is, well, why? Nothing now. I mean, that's a big argument, you know, from my perspective. I wouldn't mind riding the bus to work. The problem is, if I get on that bus, guess what? I'm sitting in the same traffic as everybody else is. And so that's, to me, it's like, I might as well just drive my car. You know?
Okay.
And
Right, we're gonna move on the agenda.
I got you, but
Right.
it's just,
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to item 6 on the agenda, minutes, approval of the minutes for the April 2, 2025 CAC meeting. Hopefully you all have had an opportunity to review the minutes as part of your agenda package. Do I have a motion to approve the April 2, 2025 minutes?
Motion to approve.
Dana offers the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Christine offers the second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Again, April 2, 2025 in your pack. All right, see no discussion in the room. There's nobody online, so that's taken care of. All in favor of the motion, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. All right, please note that as unanimous approval of the April 2, 2025 minutes. That takes us to action items. First being annual certification of Metropolitan Transportation Planning Process. Sarah Caper.
This is an item that we take to you on a regular basis. And it is the annual certification of the Metropolitan Transportation Planning Process. People, the computer is a little slow today. And this is something we do every year. It complies with our state and federal requirements. It is similar but different from the one we do every 4 years. The one every 4 years also includes the federal government and FDOT in the process. And what this is, it's a report after an extensive review that includes notable achievements that we at the TPO have done that FDOT identifies, along with recommendations and then corrective actions. And so every year we have this meeting with FDOT, they review material, we have discussion, and then they produce this report that comes to you and then it goes to the TPO board. And I'm happy to say that we have 14 notable achievements in our report this year, and they range, they're in your packet and on the slide, everything from the work we did last year on the safe access to parks and the Vision Zero study on flying waters avenues, to the public awareness that we've been doing for the Transportation Improvement Program, to the freight supply chain resiliency study. So this report documents some of those notable achievements that we've had that FDOT wants to call attention to. And it is done in partnership with us. So we do share with them what we think are notable so that they can consider that for their report. It's not just generated from them in a vacuum. And now we get to the recommended actions, and we have 3 of them in our certification this year. The first is to keep FDOT updated on organizational roles and responsibility of key staff. And this is important to FDOT so they know when they're working on certain items, who from our team is working on them. The second is to continue to communicate challenges, questions, and concerns to our FDOT liaison directly. And the third is to continue to coordinate with local governments to ensure recommendations can be implemented. And this one is important because it ensures that the idea is that if we provide a recommendation, it's something that's doable, it's something that can continue on beyond whatever that study or plan is. And we had no corrective actions. The recommended action before you this evening is to recommend that the TPO board support the annual joint certification of the TPO and authorize the TPO chair to sign the joint certification statement. I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Okay, Sarah, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the group? See no hands up. Oh, and we have no one online. All right, the recommended action. Dana?
Sorry, this is kind of random. The non-discrimination plan, when is that due to be updated?
We anticipate beginning that update later this year.
Okay.
Right. Anything? Maybe that question prompted something. No? Okay. The recommended action, I'm not going to read it back into the record. Is there an enabling motion?
I'll move.
Ed Majerski makes the motion to recommend. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll take Joe Citro as a second. Is there any further discussion? See none. We need roll call for this? Acclamation? All right, all in favor of the motion on the recommended action, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, please note that is unanimous. That takes us to, and by the way, that action item for us is also on the board's agenda for next week. The second action item is tip amendment, interstate wrong way detection system. Connor McDonald. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, committee. I'm Andre Travis McDonald. I'm here to present a tip amendment on an interstate wrong way detection system project. So a little bit of background on wrong way detection systems. The purpose is to improve roadway safety by implementing a system of various interstate ramps throughout those. We're curious what these entail, so we have a quick video played today on short explanation.
The Florida Department of Transportation addresses wrong-way driving as a key safety initiative within the state of Florida. Wrong-way driving occurs when drivers make an incorrect turn and travel against the normal flow of traffic, whether entering an interstate or traveling locally around town. These events often cause high-speed, head-on collisions with vehicles traveling in the correct direction that can result in fatal or serious injury crashes. FDOT has mainstreamed implementation of wrong-way driving countermeasures based on findings from a set of initial research projects. These mitigation efforts use intelligent transportation systems, or ITS, to detect wrong-way vehicles, as well as provide a variety of alerts. These projects include detection-based countermeasures, enhanced signage and markings, as well as the use of dynamic message signs to help inform drivers. The goal of these projects is to detect, alert, and deter these moves before a crash occurs. At project locations, the following signs and pavement markings have been installed at exit ramp intersections to help regulate movements. No right turn signs, no left turn, combination U-turn and left turn prohibition, do not enter, one way, and wrong way signs. Route shields placed at lanes approaching ramps, wrong way arrows, and reflective raised pavement markers convey proper lane guidance. FDOT is also implementing ways to provide transportation management centers with immediate alerts of wrong-way driving. Project locations focus on areas with higher likelihood for wrong-way driving to occur. Radar detectors and cameras are triggered when wrong-way driving occurs on an exit ramp, and two red LED highlighted wrong-way signs flash to alert the driver headed in the wrong direction. The system also captures images of the vehicle as it passes the sign and transmits an alert and pictures to transportation management centers and the Florida Highway Patrol. TMC operators and FHP staff respond to these alerts by advising nearby motorists through highway signs and mobilizing FHP troopers to intercept the vehicle. While wrong-way driving events on freeways tend to result in crashes of higher severity, wrong-way driving also occurs on non-freeway arterial roadways as well. To help address this, FDOT is exploring signing and pavement marking implementations for arterial roadways, including wrong-way arrow markings, various signage, and left turn dotted yellow guidelines. FDOT's initiative involves a combination of engineering countermeasures, educational outreach, and enforcement preparedness. As part of this activity, FDOT is developing technical solutions and spreading awareness, and working closely with the Florida Highway Patrol to target enforcement in areas where wrong-way driving persists. It is our goal that this wrong-way driving initiative will help save lives by minimizing wrong-way driving crashes and improving safety along Florida's roadways. Please visit fdot.tips/wrong-way for more information.
Thank you for taking some of that. We also have some quick stats to help you know more information about these systems. So the Florida Design Manual requires that all freeway and exit ramps must have at least 2 sets of static wrong-way signs. And District 7 began implementing these detection systems in May 2015. And between June 2023 and June 2024, there were 119 confirmed wrong-way incidents in District 7. So 91 of those, 77% were incidents where the driver was able to turn around and correct the crash without causing a crash. So the locations we implemented during this project.
Apologies, I got kicked out of the meeting for some reason. I'm back.
Thank you. So there's I-4, I-275, I-75, and I-275. So there's I-4 eastbound and exit 6 at Lorraine Road, I-75 northbound and exit 254, which is 301, northbound and southbound, and I-270 westbound and Rhinetown. So the details to be implemented, with these projects are forward-facing and rear-facing cameras and detectors, 2 sets of dynamic LED signs, and the system will activate the signs and notify the traffic management center. Here's an example of those detection systems. A photo here where the detection system is implemented. And the tip changes. So this tip amendment is actually a scope change. However, there are some financial changes as well. So moving about $2 million from 2025 to fiscal year 2026, and an addition of environmental funds in fiscal year 2025 at about $20 million. So the recommended action today is recommended CPO board approve the amendment to the fiscal year 25-29 transportation improvement program. And I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns.
Okay, Connor, thank you. All right, questions, comments, Dana?
So this project is just for District 7. So that 2 million would implement these wrong way devices. Is it an implementation? First of all, is it implementation or a study?
So it's implementation, and these 6 locations are in Hillsborough.
6 locations in Hillsborough. Thank you.
Clifford?
I'd asked prior to seeing the slides, which intersections Connor responded to me back on the 24th. I sat down with Google Maps and took a hard look, and I agree these are areas where there is indeed a probability of making a mistake and getting on the wrong way. So I support the choices.
Anyone else on the left side of the room? Right side? Justin?
So are these the only intersections that, do we have any other intersections that have these in place already?
Yes, absolutely. So I think I have some sets that are district wide. They may not be specific to Hillsborough, but there's 129 off ramps. And so there's 60% of these of the 129 in Hillsborough, and 68% of incidents just periods happen in Hillsborough. And then so there's 18 left implemented, and these are 6 of the last 18.
Okay. I got 2 other questions. The next one is, what's the response time? So when that thing is triggered, what's the response time for, when the whole system kicks into gear and starts getting implemented?
I'm a little unsure. We'll take a peek at this. So I believe it's, very quickly. I would imagine that it's, different based on the length of the off ramp and where the off ramp is, but I'm not sure what the average time is.
Okay. And then my final question is, do we have any idea what the maintenance cost is? Because I know we're doing the implementation, but eventually you got to start looking at what's the maintenance cost. Because you got devices out there that are in the weather, and if you're not budgeting for maintenance, operational maintenance of it, you're just setting yourself up for failure.
Right. I'm not sure about the maintenance costs. I would imagine that there's operational costs as well with the TMC. I would imagine those are important.
So Connor, did I understand that we'll see if we can get some follow-up information from FDOT on this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So it's the average response time and operational costs.
Yeah, because it'd be interesting to see that now when these devices are first installed, how responsive are they over time? Then you look at degradation.
Other questions, right side of the room? Mary?
Yeah, are there commonalities across these that make them all more susceptible to wrong-way drivers? And if there are there steps underway to make sure that those same things aren't incorporated into future designs?
So I'm
Preventative measures?
right, I'm unsure about, future designs, you mean like how future operators and on-ramps. I'm unsure. However, I do know they, FDOT, at least District 7 has a prioritization, that they evaluate projects to implement where incidents happen often. And then so prioritize where incidents happen often. And then so these are the last 18, there's six out of the last 18. So process of elimination leads.
Well, I guess my question is, are they doing things to make sure that future off-ramps aren't designed with the same issues? So we're not having to add that to additional.
Right. I'm unsure what the design manual will require in the future, but the design manual does have that these will be implemented on all ramps. So I think, I don't want to go too far, but I think, the design of the ramp, if it is conducive to less wrong-way drivers, they would still have that implementation, as a additional safety.
Was there anybody else over here to the right?
She asked the question.
Okay, well. Has anybody dropped in on us, online?
We have no CAC members online who are not in the room.
Okay, back to the left here then, Mr. Citro.
Quickly, Connor, thank you very much. Are you going to report back to us on any decisions we're going to make on this today?
So the recommended action is to recommend the TPO board approve it. So I'd imagine, board from.
So what we can do is we can do in the chair's report, the chair, what happens with this will be included, but as we get the follow-up information from FDOT, we'll share it with you, whether it's in the meeting or via email. If we get it sooner, we can definitely do that.
Then, Mr. Chair, may I make a request that when you follow up or when Sarah gives us any further information, of all the wrong way drivers that entered, can you also tell us how many were over the legal limit of alcohol? Intoxicated. Let me just put it that way. Intoxicated.
Right, under the influencer. So I do know that it's measured the incidents, so some people receive citations. I'm not sure that every crash, they do a DUI test or, blood alcohol test or anything. But I can certainly look into crashes that happen and see what the rates are in crashes.
Thank you.
Any other questions there? Dana?
Do you have the fatality and serious injury rate?
On the off-ramps and on-ramps,
Yeah, the 20 that didn't turn around.
so
No, but yeah, of the wrong way drivers, not just on the ramps.
right, so you mean the 23% offset of the 90, yes, so it's a little confusing because there's about 15% of that remaining 23% that's unaccounted for. So there's about 7% that result in fatal injury or result in crashes. And then I'm not sure about that 7%, the rate that are fatal, but I can certainly find that.
Okay, any other questions? Left side? Right side? Virtual side? Still nobody?
No, no.
Okay. Could you put the ask sign back up there? Thanks. Recommended action, recommend the TPO board approve the amendment to the fiscal year 25-29 TIP. Is there an enabling motion? Motion. Stephen Hollenkamp, beat you to it. Who was number 2?
I'll second.
Dustin Johnson, number 2 on the second. Any more comments on the motion? I see none. Again, roll call or acclamation?
By acclamation.
Acclamation is fine. All in favor of the motion, signify by aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. All right, please note that as unanimous approval of the recommended action. Thank you. And I have just an inquiry for you, Sarah.
Yep.
I noted the board has a UPWP amendment as an
Yes.
action item on their agenda. We do not. Is that something we've seen before?
The UPWP amendment is largely administrative. It's not something that I believe you've seen before. It is the money that was left from a previous UPWP when it closed that's coming back to us. So we have to do this administrative process to get it back.
Can you decode that without the?
So,
Yeah.
so, sorry. So last year, around this time in the spring, this board, the CAC saw the Unified Planning Work Program, or the UPWP. And that is the 2-year document that says what the TPO's planning dollars are going to be used for. So it details out by different tasks what the TPO is going to do and how much staff time and then money we're going to spend and then consultant dollars we're going to spend. And it details what types of things we're going to spend it on. So for example, the Bright Line Station Area study that hopefully you all got the survey on, that's something that's listed in our Unified Planning Work Program, not in detail, that's not a specific line, but we say we're going to do planning work to support things like that. And then we have a line that says what our staff amount is for that whole task and the consultants. So it's under a greater task that includes that. So around this time last year, action was taken to adopt the Unified Planning Work Program. And that runs from July 1st of 2024 through June 30th, 2026. It's 2 years and it's the July to June fiscal year. June 30th of last year, 2024, we finished the plan that we were in from that previous 2-year cycle. And what happens is you have money left over that you didn't spend, and that's very normal because you can't go negative. So you always account for a little bit of a buffer that that you're not going to spend, so you ensure you can pay all your bills because we still have to pay our bills. But what happens is after that billing cycle is over and that grant is closed out, that leftover money comes back to us. And because of the time it takes to process the grants, process everything that goes with it, this is the time that it comes back to us. So this is what the board is seeing next week at their meeting, is to process that administrative amendment. So the money we didn't spend by last June comes back to us now so we can continue to spend it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That was understandable.
That was great.
Great.
Appreciate that. Okay, that takes us to status reports and introduction of FY 26 through 30 Transportation Improvement Program. Elizabeth Watkins, you drew the short straw on this. Congratulations.
Texas, New York to Michigan. They were moved by that.
It looks like Artie has joined us, so I just muted him because the sound was coming through. But before Elizabeth gets started, I did want to just do a brief introduction. And I know that we're all very excited to see what Elizabeth has to say, so I will be brief. But just to set the stage that this is the first of 3 opportunities that you as the CAC have to talk about 2 different things. The Transportation Improvement Program, which is fiscal year 26 to 2030, and then the TPO priority list for fiscal year 27 to 31. And Elizabeth can correct me later if I say something. But so today, Elizabeth is going to provide an introduction to those 2 things for you. They're 2 different items. At your workshop on May 21st, 2 weeks from now, we will continue the conversation. So we look forward to getting your questions and your feedback. And that gives us time so we can do our best to get answers for you. We don't have them at our fingertips tonight and have a more robust discussion on solely these 2 topic areas. And then soon after that, at our meeting in the beginning of June, we'll be asking you to take action. So tonight is a little bit like part 1. It's the introduction, and it's also an opportunity for us to understand what you're looking to better understand. And then at your next workshop, we'll do our best to bring back to you additional information based on what we hear. And also after this meeting, if you think of things, you can reach out to me and I'll share that with Elizabeth. We'll have this continued conversation in 2 weeks, and then in June, we'll ask you to take action. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, you've been sitting here since the start of the meeting, so you know we have two new members for whom this is a maiden voyage, and there are several people around the table, although this isn't their first meeting, this may be their first tip. So I guess basically I'm going to ask you to be gentle. Try to stay away from the alphabet soup as much as you possibly can. And, give us a little extra editorial where you think it might be helpful to the new folks. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And for the new folks, this is one of the 4 documents that the TPO produces. These are all the federally funded projects that will be implemented. So the CAC has a history of providing really rich feedback. So I know it'll be a great discussion today, but don't hesitate. Any comments, questions, we'll answer the ones we can today, but there'll be those 2 other opportunities like Sarah mentioned. All right, so now I'm going to just provide a general overview of what the Transportation Improvement Program is, why we do it, to orient. For the longstanding members, we're almost always bringing you tip amendments. But the presentation tonight is a little bit different because this is our annual update. We bring all the projects for your consideration. So what exactly is this thing we call the tip? Well, at its simplest, it really is just like a list of federally funded and regionally significant projects that are going to be advancing in some form over the next 5 years. So we're covering fiscal year 26, so that is October 1 of 2025, all the way through September 30th of 2029. So these are the short range upcoming projects that are federally funded and regionally significant. We do this because we're required by federal and also state regulations to develop this document. And at its core, what it really does is give visibility to these projects because these are tax dollars. These are projects that are going to be advancing with this very limited pot of funding, and there are regulations in place to ensure this additional transparency. I know over the years, there may have been some questions about the relationship between the FDOT work program and the TPO's TIP. So I wanted to address that up front. So all federal funds go through FDOT. And FDOT's work program is basically all the projects they're planning to deliver over the next 5 years. And that includes state projects and federal. The TIP is really just a duplication of those federally funded projects, because that is our charge to the TPO to ensure that the process is being, that the 3C process is being followed, and that there's additional visibility to those federally funded projects. So what's required for adoption? So there's this huge list of projects, but again, public comments and engagement is a really important part. So there are numerous opportunities that TPO staff does to get the tip out in front of people. We send flyers, we put up road signs, we do social media blasts, newspaper ads. So we want to make sure that the public knows which projects are going to be coming up over the next 5 years. Agency coordination is also extremely important. So we work hand in hand with FDOT and HART in the development of the tip, because all highway transportation funds go through DOT and all federal transit funds in our area go through. We make sure that it's consistent with our long-range plan that was just adopted earlier this year. And probably most importantly, this is not a wish list. These are projects that are going to be advancing in some way over the next 5 years. So the funding's been identified, and the TIP is that programming document saying, okay, this project will go to design in this year, and there are funds available. So it gives, some again, visibility of what's advancing in the short term. This list is over 100, not over, it's about 190 projects. And how did we get there? So one way projects get into the TIP is through the TPO priority list, which will be the next presentation. The TPO, without getting too wonky, has a small set of funds that we can advance certain priorities, and those, once their program become in the TIP. The vast majority of the projects in the TIP are DOT priority projects and programs. So strategic intermodal systems, a lot of multimodal projects go through our program. So money to Tampa Airport, to Port Authority, freight projects. It's very much multimodal, this list of projects. And then lastly, kind of mentioned in the earlier presentation, operations and maintenance is a really important component of the TIP, because if we're going to build something, we have to make sure that there are revenues budgeted to make sure that we can keep our system in a state of good repair. So this is just a quick diagram where I wanted to orient you where we are in the project programming process. The priority list that you saw last year made its way through DOT's tentative work program and is now here for you today. So this is kind of the end of the road. It's about a 1.5 year cycle. And this is where we come to you and say, okay, here's what we're foreseeing over the next 5 years of what was able to be programmed. So now I'll get into the meat of the tip. And in preparation for this meeting, I went back and watched previous presentations of this being given. And I really didn't want to just like spit projects at you. So I'm trying a new approach and would love your feedback if you prefer the previous method. So a couple quick facts. There's about 187 projects listed across all modes in the tip, which equates to about $2.5 billion that is programmed over 5 years. The vast majority of that is allocated to highways. And when I say highways, I just mean projects that are predominantly administered by like DOT or local government. So we're talking new bridges, roads, sidewalks, trails. All of that is lumped under highways. The next biggest portion is transit. So HART receives a lot of federal funds for operations and capital. So they're the next biggest pot, followed by seaport, airport, and then freight. So I mentioned there are about 190 projects. The vast majority of those are projects that keep our system in a state of good repair. And so I've done a quick analysis breaking down all of those projects by the TPO's investment categories. And the TPO we have this history of categorizing the projects mostly for a digestion purpose and a way to kind of wrap your head on of where the investments are going. So when we say smart cities, we're talking about signals, any kind of technology to help move traffic along. We're talking about good repair and resilience. We're talking about resurfacing these new sidewalks or fixing gaps in sidewalks, repairing bridges. When we say Vision Zero, we're thinking specifically about standalone safety projects. Is this a new pedestrian crossing? Is this a new sidewalk? When we say real choices, we mean local bus service. We mean operations and capital for HART to deliver that. And when we say major projects, we're talking about widenings, interchanges, and fixed skyway transit. And again, this categorization is really just for digestion purposes. The vast majority of projects kind of go across multiple projects because we're trying to get the biggest bang for our buck. So nearly every resurfacing project will also include signage updates, sidewalks if they're needed, possibly even side paths or bike lanes. So take this with a grain of salt. It's really more for digestion purposes. So when you dissect the tip by LRTP category and then the funds that are actually programmed, those $2.5 billion, about half goes to major projects. And you'll recall that there weren't that many major projects, but it's expensive. Major projects are those big capital investments, road widenings, interchanges, those things cost hundreds of millions of dollars. So we would expect to see the lion's share of the revenue in the tip to go to major projects. The next largest category is also to be expected with good repair and resilience. That's where we're investing in keeping our system in a state of good repair. You may notice that miscellaneous is about 12%. It's kind of a hodgepodge of projects, and there you'll see things like new bathrooms for the airport or like herbicide applications, and those don't fit neatly in the categories. So we just call those miscellaneous for simplicity. So instead of me just spinning a bunch of projects at you, which I'm still going to do a little bit, I wanted to provide to you a QR code where you can see an interactive map of projects that are in the tentative work program. So if you want to scan this, I thought this might be a better way to kind of wrap your head around what projects are in the tip. And because this is early on in this map, you'll also see state projects that might not be, but I wanted to give you something to wrap your head around. But for the next two presentations, you'll see a tip only map. But I thought this would be a good place to start given where we are in the process. So I'm still going to highlight a few projects, focusing on 4 different categories. So the first of which are limited access capacity projects. So thinking about your interstate, your limited, your freeways. So a couple of projects are programmed in for I-275. Of course, West Shore Interchange is upcoming. That'll be, that's programmed for design build in 2028. That is a longstanding priority that will add capacity by reconstructing the general use lanes as well as adding express lanes. Additional components of the project include doing some reconnections to local roads within the project area, as well as a side path and other multimodal investments that are kind of grouped within the West Shore Interchange. The segment of I-275 from Lois to Howard, also known as Section 5 of TD Next, that again is from West Shore to downtown Tampa, right-of-way is programmed in fiscal year 30. So we're looking for that, but construction is not yet programmed. Along I-4, there are 2 auxiliary lane projects that are going to be advanced over the next 5 years. One section in Plant City from west of Bethlehem Road to west of Bridge Forbes. That is programmed for construction in 28. And then coming a little bit more westbound, there is a section of I-4 in unincorporated county from the police station to west of McIntosh Road. And that is also programmed for construction in 28. Suncoast Parkway, which has been before you a couple times through PD&E, is still in the PD&E phase, but we expect to see design and right of way also occur over the next couple years. There are a few arterial capacity projects that are also in the tip. On MLK, widening from 2 to 4 lanes, that is programmed for construction in 29. That's in East Unincorporated County. State Route 60 from Valrico to Dover is programmed for fiscal year 30. The scope of that project will also include a buffered bike lane between Valrico and Dover Road, as well as adding sidewalks where they don't exist, and some additional funds for some drainage improvements. Then US 41 from Dover to Austin, this is in like the Palm River area, very important freight, part of our freight network. That project is programmed for right of way to 27 to widen from 4 to 6 lanes. That will also include some safety improvements for pavement marking, signage, bike head enhancements, as well as a shared use path on the east side of the road. And right of way is programmed for that in 27. And then finally, we have Big Bend Road from US 41 to Covington Garden Drive. This will be administered by Hillsborough County, and construction is programmed in 2026. There are a few exciting safety projects that are also in the work program. The first of which is Bush, along Bush from Dale Mabry to Nebraska. This has been a longstanding priority for the TPO, where there'll be new medians, sidewalks, traffic signal upgrades, lane narrowing, and reducing the speed to 35 miles per hour. The scope of this project, the sidewalks will have to be reduced a little bit than was initially planned due to some right-of-way constraints. It already included about 5 million for right-of-way, nearly doubled to sidewalks on, I think the southern portion of it. So that project will change a little bit, but most of it remains the same. Some exciting safety improvements from Fowler all the way from Florida Avenue to west of 56th Street, widening the sidewalks, adding some intersection improvements, some mid-block crossings to improve safety along the back corridor. And then finally, construction of a pedestrian signal at 56 in Sawaha and Temple Terrace. Is programmed for construction. There are a variety of bike walk projects. So some greenways and sidewalks are advancing. So the South Coast Greenway overpass over Big Bend, that is programmed for construction in 29. The city of Tampa recently won a Sun Trail grant to build the South Tampa Greenway, connecting like Picnic Island Park all the way to like Manhattan. So that will be an important connection in the South Tampa Trail network. Tampa Bypass Canal is also advancing with PE programmed in 27. And then Fowler Avenue Trail from 56 to I-75 is also in the plan with construction in 28. So just at a high level, describe some of the safety investments that are in the TIP. The extension of the TCO streetcar is still in there. As many of you know, they want a small starts grant. FDOT is putting in state funds. We're just kind of waiting on the PD&E to wrap up and then identifying the local source to advance that project. The state also gives state funds to support HARD and 2 of their routes, the 34 and 400. Funds for the heavy maintenance facility, which is HARD's top priority. And then the TPO has routinely given highway funds to HARD for their bus replacements and their bus stop capital improvements. And a variety of new signals are going to be going in all at all ranges of the county. I won't go through these in detail because I know it's a lot to just have the project spat at you, but I wanted to emphasize the TIP is multimodal in nature. So to kind of wrap up in next steps, as Sarah mentioned, there will be a workshop in 2 weeks where we can dive deeper into any project specific questions I can't answer for you today. Or if you want to talk at a high level, how the TIP is developed, funding, any of that, we would be happy to use that time if that's how you would like to use it. And then at your June 4th meeting, we'll be asking that you make a recommendation to the TPO board to consider their June 11th hearing. We're at the very beginning of this journey. We'll be back again to you 2 times, be doing engagement, and we're targeting that June 11th adoption. So I'd be happy to take any questions, discussions, and thoughts you have for that.
Okay, thank you. That was good, and I suspect, there are some questions. All right, start over here. Dana?
So early in your presentation, you said that the TIP isn't a wish list. But it kind of is, isn't it? Because of the prioritization of those projects. So it's a wish list in that the ones you wish for the most are at the top and the ones that are not as high priority are at the bottom. Is that correct?
That is a great comment. I should have touched at the beginning. This year, I'm trying something different. Typically, we would put together that priority list in the TIP, but I intentionally am trying out separating them so we can have 2 distinct conversations. So we'll talk about that priority list next. That's the wish list.
Well, I know that there's a LOPP, a list of priority projects, and that they're separate, and I love that. But I still thought that the TIP was in order of prioritization in some way. So anything in the TIP is programmed funding per the year and the phase and all of that.
Yes.
Okay. And so you're saying that section 5 of the TBX is in the TIP for this upcoming 5 years. Is that true?
Yes, I believe that section is programmed for right of way in fiscal year 30. It is not programmed for construction.
Okay. I'll ask more questions with your background.
You're assuming that I'll be back. All right, Joe?
May I, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Would it be futile for me to ask that there be changes in the priority list again, as we did last time? I.e. the streetcar and rail from downtown to Tampa that we were rejected time and time again? Would it be futile for me to ask those things yet again?
Well, you'll be really happy to know that that recommendation was treated as a policy decision, and I'll talk about that in the next presentation. We'll talk about priority list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Stephen Jones?
Yes, where does residential canals fit in the TIP, if at all? A residential canal maintenance?
So things like the Henry Canal, that is an important, I'm gonna pass that by my wheelhouse and read it. Is an important canal that DOT in partnership with like City of Tampa maintains for right-of-way drainage purposes. So there are a few canal maintenance projects in the TIP, but they're solely for drainage benefits as they relate to surface transportation.
Okay, so you don't consider them transportation, more or less drainage, is it?
That's something that maybe we can add to the follow-up list, but it is a little bit out of the norm of what we have, so we'll do our best to get you that information, but it might not be as fast as some of the rest.
Okay, right side of the room. Dustin, was your hand up?
You can go first.
Okay, Ed?
Yeah, I was just gonna point out one observation, and then I have a question. The pie chart that you showed is very different than the pie chart that was in what was sent out with the agenda, and that's neither here nor there. My question is, I-4 auxiliary lanes, what exactly is an auxiliary lane? Are we basically saying we're adding a lane?
So that project. Okay, so the one that is in Plant City, that is a 12-foot wide asphalt auxiliary lane. So something that's kind of, you know what an auxiliary lane is, that. But not a full lane, I think it's about a mile to help move traffic. So that's the intent of an auxiliary lane. That'll be 12 foot, and then they will also be adding a 12-foot wide asphalt shoulder for safety purposes.
But so basically, it's adding a lane over that section of road.
Yes, and we can, if you want to know more about that, if the CAC does as well, we can provide more information on auxiliary lanes.
Okay, I just am not sure I understand the terminology of auxiliary lane.
An auxiliary lane comes on with an entrance from an exit when people come on, and then it ends, it doesn't continue past the next exit.
Okay.
It's merge. It's a lane that is there temporarily. It's not a permanent lane. It doesn't go through for a length. It goes through within like exits.
Okay.
Dustin?
So just so I understand, based off of what Daniel was saying, is that everything's in the tip. It's not changing, but we have the ability to rack and stack the priority. Or am I wrong on that?
Sorry.
That's a great opinion. I would generally agree with that assessment. The tip is what's programmed, what's budgeted. It is from DOT's work program, so we don't change, projects aren't really changed. Where we have the most influence is on that priority list in the next presentation.
Okay, so then based off of that, then my question is, how long ago were these projects added in? Was this like based off of plan 2020 that took place 20 years ago, like we're doing with 2050? Or was this something that's fairly recent? The reason why I say it is, it's like I see it on there widening Big Bend from 41 to Covington Park, right? And yeah, that's needed, but my question would be, what studies were done to add that into this portion and not look at what FDOT did? They redesigned the whole intersection of I-75 in Big Bend and now created an even bigger mess by putting 3 lanes out there that reduces to 2 right at the hospital, St. Joseph South Hospital. And I don't know, maybe I think something there for smoking something that's here and there, but I just, how do they? Never mind, maybe just, we'll go move on to the next thing.
Maybe I'll get close. We might be able to talk a little bit at the workshop about how some projects, we can get some example projects and talk through how they made their way here. And we can see if we can find some ones that kind of walk through the life cycle of how it ended up today in here.
Well, I mean, how long ago was a traffic study done?
Yeah.
Was it 5 years ago? Was it recently? Did they do any studies otherwhere at any other place?
I guess the only thing I'll add is that this update is just the continuation. These projects take a long time to develop, and it didn't come out of nowhere. They went through normal processes. We've definitely dive deeper.
Their hands here on the right side. Christina Costa.
Elizabeth, I've been through this, I don't even remember how long I've been on this committee, but I want to say like maybe 8 years or something. I really love this presentation that you did, and I am just want to thank you for like watching the other meetings for you. But anyway, a couple questions. Would you reiterate the definition of fixed guideway transit?
The way we define fixed guideway transit is any transit that is in its own lane. So the really only two projects we have here in Hillsborough County are the streetcar.
Mhm.
And then hopefully I can come before you one day and say we have funding program for the arterial BRT.
Right, okay, all right. So bus rapid transit is a bus lane that is only for buses. And then I wondered, are there any discussions happening? Because one really big land use modification that happened about, I want to say 3 years ago, was the Florida passage of something called Live Local. And so this is where developers can create communities in what would otherwise have been non-permittable with zoning code. So like industrial is one example. Are we seeing any of that happen in the land use side that then really needs to be considered with the transportation and transportation orientated development nuances? So is any of that coming together?
That is such a great question. And one of the benefits of the TPO sitting fed and playing Hillsborough, which the other side is from the land use, they're knee deep in live local and, impact fees for transportation. So I don't know the answer, but we'll be prepared to address that.
Okay. And then my last question is part comment, but I recently heard Dr. Wong speak about the public comment was one in your process map of what happens. And I'm probably not going to say it perfectly, so if he's listening, correct me or get mad at me later. But Dr. Wong did admit that public comment for a very, very long time has been surveys and requests for transit. And yet the pie pieces don't reflect that those wishes correlate with budget allocations. So I'll be interested to learn more about that when we go through our workshop and really try to embrace like what is the community asking for as the citizens representatives. I think it's important that we know what's being asked for versus what are we getting and where's the gap and what power do we have? What are the levers we can pull on the CAC in the process?
Okay, Dana, you had assumptions and they have borne fruit. Go right ahead.
We're flying. The Fowler crosswalks, are those gonna be flashing beacons, some kind of, because Fowler is, you can't just put a crosswalk on Fowler. So I'm just wondering if those are gonna be as awesome as like some of the ones on Fletcher.
She even has a lot of those. I don't remember the pedestrian signal type, but I'll have that.
I would love that. And also,
It's probably like an RFP around the flash.
okay,
Stabilized mid-block crossing.
signalized. That's good.
Lighting improvements, out of the proposed mid-blocks.
Okay.
I have a listing in for you.
Awesome. And then the TPO, you said something about the TPO gives something like highway money to the bus stop improvements. Can you talk about what that means?
Yeah, I'm trying not to get too wonky on this, but MPOs receive something called like a sub-allocation of highway funds. It comes from federal highway. It's somewhere between, I don't know, 15 to $25 million per year. And it's been the longstanding policy of the TPO board to flex some of those highway funds over to transit so that HART can use those to replace some of their buses and then make some bus stop improvements.
Perfect. And one more comment, and that is that the tip, even though we don't prioritize it, the TPO can actually remove projects from it and change the language in there, like what happened last year when they changed the language for a highway noise wall project to be a widening project in the 11th hour. So just keep that in.
And to clarify that, I mean, that motion by Commissioner Wallstone was on the priority list. I think, again, one of the reasons why we're trying to separate them is he he made the motion and it passed to change the description of the widening of I-275 from Hillsborough to Beers. It wasn't in the TIP.
So for example, like if it were to happen this year or something like that, it wouldn't be in the tip item, it'd be in the priority list item. Because we've separated them.
But that change was in the tip, right?
Last year, the two were combined for most people's intents and purposes, the two were put into one document, even though they're separate things. This time around, they are two completely separate things and two completely separate documents. So the list that you're referring to is not in the tip at all. This time around, it is its own standalone priority list. And it's not in the tip at all if you look through it.
The reason I'm asking is because the highway widening from Hillsborough to Bears, that vote impacted funding. There was funding that went to start the study of that capacity project. So even though I do understand that they were combined last year and they're not now, but even as combined, that was a change to the table in which money is programmed. Is that correct? Or was it
I
in?
would describe it as more of just like, I mean, it's great. It's more of a signal to FDOT that there is support for that project now. So it's more of a political pass, not programming new funding to do design. Because that project hasn't been isn't in the tip.
It wasn't in the tip. Okay.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions from the left side of the room? Yes, ma'am.
In this upcoming meeting that we're going to have, will it break down and define that a little bit more? Because that's kind of still a little gray in how it feels a little finagly. So I just want to make sure I understand as well. What Dana, I could kind of agree with Dana, because we're moving money around. We're saying it's a priority, but we're taking money from something else that's allocated where the money's supposed to be. That's what it sounds like. So I'm a little confused as well.
Do you want to add anything to that? Because money wasn't reallocated.
Okay.
So.
All right, for the record, DOT representative has now taken the podium. If you please would identify yourself for the record.
Suzanne Ziegler, Government Liaison for District 7. There was no money that was taken out of the tip. So last year was 25 through 29 was the fiscal years. What happened was that the project was on a previous year tip. I can't off the top of my head remember which one it was. That money was sitting on that project when Commissioner Wastel made the motion to change and it was approved. We were able to use that money that was already sitting on the project in that older fiscal year. So nothing was taken from 25 through 30 to program that project. Okay. Yeah, it gets a little hairy because there's so many projects in the law, and I think separating it out kind of helps make sense of it. So it is confusing, and I apologize for that.
And I'm going to borrow finagly. I like that. I will be using that. Any other questions or comments left of the room? Right of the room. You guys are awake. All right, Justin.
Can you expand upon the South Coast Greenway overpass over Big Bend Road? Like, where is that actually taking place? That what's it trying to connect to?
Yes.
I'm trying to understand where that's gonna be out on Big Bend.
Right. So it is purely just the overpass. So the South Coast Greenway is like a long-standing trail connection that needs to be made, and one of the big hurdles is getting over Big Bend. So we can follow up on this on the 21st on the status of what it's actually connecting. But this investment that is programmed for 29 is to help get that over Big Bend Road.
I just don't know where that South Coast Greenway.
We can get more information for the.
Gotcha.
Ed?
I was just gonna say, it would be really helpful if somebody could help us understand, and I used to know this, but have long ago forgotten. What categories of state and federal funding can be flexed to transit? Because, with that knowledge, we could potentially say, we're willing to not do these 3 highway projects and instead do something that's transit oriented. I mean, way back, there was the interstate substitution thing that you could actually take money that was going to be used to build an interstate segment. And like Portland, Oregon used it to build a light rail system. I don't know to what extent that program's, anything like it still exists in the different funding categories, to what extent there's ability to flex.
Can't totally have that information, but traditionally it's the surface transpiration block grant funding that is flexed to FTA, but we can do an analysis of which other federal programs are eligible.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, right side, anyone else? Christine?
Elizabeth, are we, I know we're not talking about canals necessarily, but what about our waterway transit? Is there anything that we are gonna have in the TIF to indicate, that we're hanging on by a thread to ferry transit?
There are no ferry funds in the TIF.
Okay, anything else in the room? Anybody that dropped in online?
If you wish to speak, please raise your hand. No one online wishes to speak.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I have a couple of questions. First of all, with reference to Hart's line 34 and 400 that you referenced in one of your slides, what are they? Where are they?
I'll have to look into the 34, but the 400 is the former Metro Rapid route that goes along Nebraska. 34 kind of escapes me, but
Okay, and does anybody in the room know by chance? No? Okay. The Tampa Bay Next Section 5 segment from West Shore down into downtown or Howard Avenue. You made reference to express lanes. We've been talking about express lanes on that section of Interstate 275 now for years. Has the DOT made any commitment as of now as to how those express lanes are going to be managed?
understanding is that that hasn't been determined, but I'll follow up.
Okay, yeah, I would like to see something more definitive about that by the time of our workshop and certainly by early June. If they haven't decided, fine, tell us they still don't know. They've been telling us that for years. But if a decision's been made, I think we need to know that.
Do you want 34?
Yeah, do you know what 34 is?
Goes from, along Hillsborough Avenue, generally from the Net Park Transfer Center to the Northwest Transfer Center. Town and Country. Yeah, Town and Country on Hillsborough Avenue.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you for that. Something that we've talked about now several years, the concept of projects being beyond the point of no return. That comment, that topic has been beaten to death over years. I'm not sure that the concept still exists after David Wynn's last speech back in October, but that's a matter of record. We'll look at it some other time. But one of the things that we have asked of TPO staff is that items on the tip, tables 1, 2, and 3, and I assume tables 1 probably are spoken for, but anything on the tip that someone is alleging is beyond the point of no return as we see the document, that it be identified in some way, that it be color coded so that there are no surprises, right? We may or may not agree with that designation, but that somebody somewhere is saying that's beyond the point of no return for whatever reason they may think that. Is that something that could be done
Oh, absolutely. That can be ready for your May 21st.
for the workshop?
Yeah.
Okay, cool beans. Thank you. Let's see. Next part. Tables. Oh, another thing we've asked for frequently that I have yet to see materialize in the documents, that the projects that impact communities of concern, that those projects be somehow highlighted and identified for us so that we know, for instance, that a road widening in some area of the county is impacting a community of concern, a minority community, an area that has low-income elderly, whatever it may be, that those projects that will be particularly impactful to those who are least able to deal with the impact, that we know what they are. And we've asked for this now for years. I've yet to see anybody actually come up with it, although people have stood at that podium and nodded yes, saying, yeah, we'll do it. I have yet to see it. So that would be a great thing.
If I could react to that, so.
Yeah, please.
The appendix where we do that sort of analysis, again, it's in an appendix. If you want to take a look at that, we've done, I think, for the past 3 tips. I will make sure that that is highlighted for the May 21st workshop, but there has been some precedent of doing that analysis.
Okay, well, thank you. If I missed it, I apologize.
It's a 400-page document. It's easy to miss.
I've read most of them, but still, that particular item I missed, so I apologize. Okay, I think that's all I have at this juncture. Appreciate it. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay.
Just a note, if someone thinks of something, like you leave here and you're on your way home, and you're like, I should have asked that. Please reach out to me and I will share that with Elizabeth. The sooner we have it, the more time we can spend trying to figure out the answer. But if you do think of something, please do send that so we could have more information available for the workshop.
Okay, that takes us to the next status report. What are we calling it? The introduction to the FY 27-31 TPO priority list. Welcome back.
So for you old timers, this is the former Table 1 and Table 2. This is the document that the TPO board communicates its priorities to FD. So what exactly is this priority list? It's kind of exactly what it sounds like. It is a ranked list from 1 to, I think, like 73 this year of priority projects that the TPO board is going to advocate for, so that hopefully there will be funding programmed when we come back to you next year with the transportation improvement program. Often those funds are for the next 5th year. So in practice, most of these funds are being competed to be programmed for fiscal year 31. Again, illustrating how long it takes to really deliver transportation projects. How is this used in practice? So I mentioned earlier that it prioritizes projects for certain federal funding sources that are sub-allocated to the MPO. That's somewhere between $15 to $25 million a year. DOT has that programming authority, as they should, being the state DOT. So the importance of this list is one way to communicate those priorities for that funding source. But they can also do other things, such as communicate a need to DOT on their own facilities. So if the city of Tampa saw a problem on Dale Mabry and they wanted DOT to consider that in a project that they're going to be developing over the next few years, the priority list is just another method to communicate that. And then finally, the priority list is used to show just community support and advocacy for these projects. Often agencies going after discretionary funds need to point to something and say there's community support, and this is one method to do that. I'll spend a little more time on this slide since I know the process is confusing. I intentionally wanted this item to go next because we're at the earlier stage of the programming process. So over the winter time, we've worked with all 4 local governments in Hart to talk with them about their priorities, what projects they think that they could implement, and what they wanted to compete for funding for. So we took that information, evaluated the projects, and came up with a draft priority list that will go to the board in June. Then we'll send that to DOT as they're developing their tentative work program, which you'll see fall, winter time, see those initial funding recommendations. And then this time next year, you'll see what was official in the transportation. Local agencies play a really important role in this. All projects on their priority list must come from a local agency because they are the ones that are actually going to be delivering and constructing and maintaining that investment. So there are many ways to influence that, working directly with jurisdictions on identifying needs and suggesting projects. But to ultimately get on the list, the projects have to come from the local government or Hart. The TPO's role in this process is to facilitate that coordination, evaluate, rank, and propose that list for the TPO. And then lastly, DOT has that funding authority. They provide the oversight, and of course, they're at the table with us every step of the way. At a high level, how are projects ranked? So I mentioned we received the applications from those local agencies. The TPO staff will categorize those in the project categories that I mentioned earlier, as a way to kind of just compare apples to apples, because it would be really difficult to compare a widening project to a trail project. There's not a really great way to do that. So we'll evaluate those projects and then essentially put them in those groups. So the TPO board has stated that their first kind of set of priorities are the smart cities, technological transportation projects. The next priority is good repair. The third priority is safety, Vision Zero, followed by real choices and major projects. So this is largely a quantitative process, but I did want to call out that per the board's direction last year at the recommendation of the CAC, there was an amendment process to move up the streetcar extension, downtown to airport transit, and a Brightline multimodal connections to the top of their categories. So staff is treating that as a policy decision. So regardless of ranking, they are at the top of the categories for the board to consider, since that was a recent action for the past year. So now I'll get into highlights of some of those draft projects that are on the priority list. Again, these are all projects that haven't been finished. They're advocating for funding wherever they are in the process. Maybe they need funding for design, maybe they need funding for construction. All of them are at different stages in the process. So you will see that there are 73 projects that are on the priority list, but only about 18% of those are actively seeking TPO sub-allocated funds for fiscal year 31. Because it's important to know that often our problems are more immediate and can't wait 5 years to get funding. So agencies are often very strategic about the applications they submit, which projects are maybe they need that extra federal funding for, so what can wait a little bit longer and what doesn't need to be addressed immediately. Just kind of wrap your head around these projects. There are projects suggested in all corners of Hillsborough County and all of the municipalities across program LRCP project categories. So I mentioned there's just a subset of projects that are actively competing for funding in fiscal year 31. So here's a list of them. All of them submitted applications and they are now ranked on the priority list, which DOT will use to determine how far can that funding go? Can we make it to a Vision Zero project? But the first priority will go to the smart cities projects, then the good repair, Vision Zero, real choices, major investments for economic growth until funding is exhausted. Another part of the priority list are those program for construction. So again, old timers, this is our table one. These are projects that have made it through most of the process, but still need funding for construction. There are over 50 projects on that list that we keep on there in case funding becomes available or in case something happens and there's an overrun and they need additional funding. It's really, really important that we have continuity in the projects that we invest in. We would hate to see a project need some more money to be completed and then not do that and then have it never happen. So there has to be continuity in these investments because again, a lot of money is spent in different phases of that process development. So just a couple highlights for you. US 41 at CSX freight separation. This has been one of the TPO's highest freight priorities over the past probably 10 years. And there is funding program for construction within the TIP, which is very exciting. This will have a grade separated portion of US 41 to ensure that freight traffic isn't inhibited and also separate the local traffic and have a bike or a shared use path on one side, given that there's a lot of industry there and there are people who don't have a car. So the investment, so that component was integrated in the scope. Another priority project that has construction programmed is the pedestrian signal at 56 in Sawaha. This project bubbled up from a recent 56th and 50th Street corridor study. There were a number of bike head crashes. It's located right across from a shopping center. So this was an investment that Temple Terrace wanted to have delivered. So that is programmed for funding. And I mentioned earlier in the tip presentation that South Tampa Greenway, that's been a priority, and that is also a program for construction. So we'll look forward to seeing that built in the next 5 to 8 years. I thought it was important that we take a minute to celebrate our completed priority projects, because again, these things take decades sometimes to do. And I think it's important to reflect on those completions because they're community successes. So the first major project is the Howard Franklin Bridge. This has been a longstanding priority that the general use lanes just opened for traffic. I think the expressways will be opening later in the summer, and there will also be a side path along the bridge connecting Hillsborough and Pinellas. So this was a mega project that that was completed that we want to celebrate. Additionally, some intersections improvement at Boy Scout Road in Manhattan near West Shore area. There's a picture of the before and after. Now there's a signal there for traffic flow, for safety, some enhanced crosswalks, signal upgrades. Nebraska Avenue has been a long-standing priority for the TIP, all the way back when it was like a one-way pair. We've seen a huge evolution of Nebraska. And most recently completed this winter were some different pedestrian upgrades. So some signalized mid-block crossings, some pedestrian refuges, sidewalks, things to make it easier for people on Nebraska to be safe and walking. And then finally, some signals out in the eastern portion of the county along US 301 at Harney, US 301 at Stacy, and US 301 at Nacogdoches. Not only were there new signals implemented with mast arms, but there is also now a connection made to the old Fort King Trail, I believe. So again, some next steps is very similar to the TIP. You will see the actual draft priority list at your workshop, and then in June to reflect on, but that's just kind of an introduction of what it is, what you can expect to see the next time we talk about this.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Questions, comments? Dana?
The adoption dates are, I read about a lot of this after every weird thing that happened last year. The adoption dates are different for the LOP and the TIP, right? What are?
They'll be the same. Technically, they're not due to DOT until like July 15th or August 1st, but that we adopt them. The TPO board will adopt them on the same day.
At the same time, okay.
But they'll be two separate items like they are today.
June, what is it that they're due?
July 15th and August 1st. It doesn't really matter, but that's probably where you got, yeah.
Thank you.
Left side of the room here. Hands, right side. Online.
Anyone online? I see no questions online.
Okay, Elizabeth, thank you. That concludes our status report. Appreciate it. All right, that takes us, oh, wait a minute. That was something I wanted to ask you, Sarah.
Yes.
There is a status report scheduled for the TPO board
Yes.
that is not on our agenda. Curious if you have maybe a short version. The regional TPO merger study update that you're going to be giving to the TPO board next week. Can you give us something on that now?
So included in your agenda packet as an addendum, it's addendum C, you'll see MPO merger quarterly report. This is something that we've started. This is the second quarterly report. If you go to the website, you'll see the first one, which happened in, it was published in January for the quarter before. So the report, that's the link in your agenda packet, is the activities that happened between January and March on the merger. And what the TPO board will be hearing is pretty much what's in that report, but the summary of it is that the TPO conducted a procurement. We're still technically in the middle of the process, but we conducted a procurement to seek consultant assistance for the next steps in the regional NPO process, which is to have a consultant help with I would say largely administrative or operational kinds of things. So what would a apportionment plan look like? The Transportation Management Area Leadership Group, or TMA, has had discussions on apportionment, but they haven't been concluded. So this would continue that conversation on what would a merged MPO board look like who literally would have the seats on that board, not the people, but the entities. This consultant would also be assisting with what does that look like from a staff level? How many staff people do you need? What would an organizational chart look like? Would the MPO, if it was merged, be hosted by an agency or independent? And an example of a host is the Hillsborough TPO is hosted by the Planning Commission. So all of our staff are technically staff of Plain Hillsborough or the Planning Commission, but then we are assigned and we work for the TPO. And so because TPOs get reimbursed from grants on a quarterly basis, you need to have some way to pay people and pay for studies before the work comes back, because we don't have any upfront money without our host. The host is the one who provides the funding to pay for the consultants, to pay our bills, to make sure that we have office space. And then we get reimbursed from FCOT after we have that expense. And so the consultant will be exploring a range of options about how would committees look, and things like that. So we released the procurement in February. We said, this is what we're looking to have from a consultant. We had a scope of work. Then we had proposals that were due in the end of March to us, and the Hillsborough TPO is handling this because we are the ones of all the MPOs in the region that have the agreement with FDOT to receive the funding for the study. So the Hillsborough TPO, we received proposals from 4 consultants to do that work. We had a selection committee meet. Those were public, open to the public meetings. The selection committee consisted of the executive directors of each of the 3 MPOs. So Pasco MPO, Forward Pinellas, and Hillsborough TPO, the 3 executive directors were part of that selection committee. And the procurement itself details what they're supposed to be evaluating. So the selection committee met. They determined that they wanted to have interviews, which was optional in the procurement. So they discussed and reviewed the proposal. They decided to have interviews. We had the interviews pretty shortly after. And then the selection committee met again and provided a recommendation on the top 2 firms that they'd like to proceed with in a ranked order, so that negotiations could begin, for example, with the top firm, but if something happens along the way, they felt comfortable with the second ranked firm. And then if something falls through with them, we'd have to go back to the drawing board. So that recommendation of the selection committee is going to the Transportation Management Area Leadership Group at its May 23rd meeting for their recommendation. And then the TPO board will be asked to take action at its June meeting. And what we're going to be asking the TPO board to do in June is approve the recommendations from the bodies that are recommending. But what we're asking for them to approve is to allow staff to proceed with negotiations. So after that time, if they approve it, staff would begin negotiating a scope and fee based on what we have with the consultant. And then we'd have to go back to the TPO board to approve it, because it is a large amount of money. So the TPO board would approve that agreement that was negotiated, and then work would begin. And so the TPO board will be getting that update, which is also listed in the quarterly report at their meeting.
Okay, you're welcome, because now you've had a dry run of the report. And by the way, she was not warned that I was going to ask that, so that purely off the top of her head, which I find most impressive.
Dana did
I
ask
emailed
about it.
Oh, you did?
She did.
Okay,
But
well, you didn't know I was going to ask you.
it's not, but I will say that is, I'm managing that project, so I hope I can speak to it.
Okay, well,
I have a question
Dana,
about it. What, you said it's a large amount of money for that consultant. How much is the?
Well, we don't know how much the consultant will be because we haven't negotiated that agreement. But the agreement that we have with FDOT is the Hillsborough TPO and FDOT have agreed on a scope for $500,000. So this consultant project, that's how much funding we have as a maximum, and that was listed in the procurement as like how much is budgeted.
Thank you.
comments or questions from the room? Online?
Anyone online? I see no one online.
All of these discussions, the committee meetings and the like, they're all in the sunshine?
Election committee meetings were in Sunshine, and the summary of those two meetings is posted on the TPO's website under the regional MPO project page.
And who were the two consultants that came in 1 and 2?
The top ranked one was White House Group. And the second ranked one was a firm or a team called Public Works.
All right, thank you.
And that is all listed in those summaries that are on the website.
Thanks. All right, that takes us to unfinished business and new business. CAC workshop, May 21 at 6 p.m. Take us there.
Well, thank you for your feedback. We will see you in 2 weeks in this room and virtually. If you don't have the meeting information, since we scheduled it later, please reach out and let our team know. But otherwise, we hope to see you there. Like this meeting, it will be recorded. So if you miss the meeting, we can provide the recording to you.
Okay. And the next CAC meeting after that would be June 4th at 6 p.m. Make sure you put a red letter on that day. That'll actually be the meeting when the tip is presented to us as an action item. So hopefully we'll have all our questions answered before we walk in the room that day. Member interest and future topic requests. Are there any, Dana?
Quick question for you, Sarah. Is the CAC workshop May 21st? Is that open to the public or is that a closed CAC meeting?
It is open to the public.
Will it be right here?
It'll be in this room, open to the public. The public will not be able to engage in the CAC discussion. The discussion is for CAC members, but the public will have an opportunity to provide public comment and the public can be in the room and hear the conversation.
Okay, awesome. So my member interest, I think I said at the last meeting or one of the last ones was actually Ed's suggestion about understanding what federal and state funds are available for use for transit. I think he was specifically saying transit, which would be my top interest as well, but also bicycle and pedestrian and like non-car. So
We have everyone's member interest items that we've been getting in. We plan on doing another poll of the CAC to help us prioritize those probably over the summer when you have your break. I will say the list of items you have given us is probably about a baker's dozen, and we have at least 12 to 15 items on that list. So we're going to be asking you to help us say which of those we should focus our efforts on. So look for that this summer, but keep adding them. Yeah.
Okay. Any other future topics? I want to throw something on the fire? Nope. Okay. Well, that takes us to line item number 9, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
I see 1 and I see 2. Okay, let's just call that unanimous. Thank you all, and please note we are a good 16 minutes early. So thank you so much. Yeah, pizza help.
Yeah, a lot.
Sarah,
And thank you for the
Sarah,
pizza.
would you go